The Memory of Love, chapter 15. The man on the table has dreams. He dreams of Mary. The most Kai usually knows about a patient is a name and a medical history, sometimes not even that much. But this patient is Kai's elective. His dream is to walk straight and find a bride, or perhaps it would be truer to say, to become a groom. There are few who would give their daughter to a cripple, especially a poor one. His name is Fode. This will be his first operation. Kai works the pedal of the diathermy with his foot, cauterizing the blood vessels at the point of incision. In contrast to his youthful face, Fode's body is muscular and bears old scars, one on the heel of his right hand, another on the back of the leg upon which they are operating. Upon his right buttock, two small disc-shaped scars. Looks like he's been through the wars, this one, says Seligman, and then, sorry as he catches the Anastasia's glance. She is, Kai knows, merely confused by Seligman's use of idioms. But he says nothing. Fode lies on the table, asleep and naked. He has placed his dreams in the hands of the surgeon and his balls in the hands of a nurse, who holds them aloft, out of danger of the scorching end of the diathermy wand. He expects miracles. Kai knows. An hour and a half later, Kai, alone in the theater, works on, soaking the plaster of Paris bandages in water and wrapping them around Fode's leg. The leg is straight now. Kai's hands work dexterously, smoothing the slippery plaster. Fode's other leg slides off the table. Kai moves around and replaces it carefully, leaving plaster of Paris hand-printed on the upper thigh. He is as intimate with Fode's body as with a lover. He takes a damp cloth and dabs at the chalky prints on Fode's thighs. There are splashes of wet plaster on his genitals, and Kai wipes them too. If he has time, when he has seen how things are going in emergency, maybe he will stop by the ward. Try and get there soon after Fode wakes up. A hillside. How many years ago? 5, 6. Kai, Tejani, and Neneba. Two of them revising for a test, textbooks, and lecture notes. A picnic of peppered chicken and vimto. They hadn't gone far, just the hills above the campus. There they had a view of the city, of the sprawling docks, the smell of dried grass. Tejani and he rehearsing mnemonics upon Neneba's person. C5, 6, 7, said Kai. Raise your wings up to heaven. His fingers walked up Neneba's back between her shoulder blades, using her vertebrae as stepping stones, feeling the muscles quicken at his touch before she let her arms float upwards like a bird in flight. Injury causes inability to raise arms past 90 degrees, replied Tejani, lying on his back with his hands across his eyes. Kai laid the flat of his hand against Neneba's back, and results in Tejani spoke each word slowly, pushing against the effort of remembering. Winging of the scapula, he lifted his hands from his eyes. Neneba clapped. Don't exercise in quicksand, said Kai. Diaphragm, external intercostals, internal intercostals, quadratus, Tejani responded. Kai's fingers traced maps across Neneba's ribs. I long for spinach. Kai bent to Neneba's ear and whispered, I love sex, her soft snort and giggle as she elbowed him in the ribs. Ilicostalis, longissimimus, spinals, Tejani recited, and I heard that, by the way, you too. Kai sitting facing Neneba and Tejani, the sky behind them, watching his face drift into hers and back again, until he can no longer tell one from the other. A cloud passes in front of the sun. The shadows spread across their faces, obliterating their features. Another time, before or after, he cannot be sure. The two of them alone, he lying on his back with his head in her lap, savoring the warmth and scent of her and of their recent love-making, gazing at an upward tilted nipple. Neneba, he said, and she leans back on her hands, puts her head on one side, the better to peruse him, and asked, "Why do you call me that?" "Nobody else does," and he replies, "Because it is your name. Neneba, that is your name, isn't it? Or am I getting you confused with somebody else?" And she grabs a t-shirt and hits him with it. And when he opens his mouth, the better to laugh at his own joke, she stuffs the shirt inside. It tastes of her. He gives the finished plaster an experimental knock, pulls the cord for the porters. Afterwards, in the surgeon's restroom, he writes up notes of the operation. There is nothing for him yet in emergency. Mid-morning, and the staff room is crowded. A year or so ago, somebody had brought a miniature croquet game, and the medics sometimes passed their breaks knocking balls across the limo. Now the miniature croquet has been superseded by the miniature balls. Though the balls are prone to skid and bounce, he is in no mood either for bowls or for conversation. He passes by the window on his way to Adrian's apartment and lets himself in. Nobody is home. In the kitchen, he switches on the kettle and waits for it to come to the boil. A sunbird is perched on the feeder outside, hanging upside down, angling its head to reach the pipette from the fridge. Kai takes a plastic jar of coffee, creamer, and the box of sugar cube, stirs one and then the other into his cup, and carries it to the sitting room. He rarely eats until surgery is over for the day. And today, another letter from Tijani, the second in just a few days. He has yet to reply to the last, though he has composed several different versions in his head. The timing of the letter's arrival is down to the vagaries of the post. The actual days are 2 weeks apart. He spreads them both out on the coffee table in front of him, helps himself to a pen and paper from Adrian's store, and sits down to write. In his first letter, Tijani writes of a waiter, the results of his first stage professional surgical exams, of which he is tentatively hopeful. The second letter is much shorter. "Well, I did it, bro. I did it, Christ, though I wish you'd been here. I had to put in a couple of all-nighters there at the end. Remember that time we did 3 in 1 week until we ran out of candles? We sneaked into Moore's room and took his battery light and got it back in the cupboard in the morning. Man couldn't figure why the thing had run out of juice. And the palaver in front of the Vice Chancellor's office when we went to hand in the petition. Those were the days I was telling Helena about it. She can relate, being from Belarus, but I tell you, should be here. You've got the qualifications and they are crying out for people like you and me. Man, I can give you any help you need. But the agency handles it all anyway. Don't worry about where to stay. This place has a couch with your name on it. But seriously, if I get this job, I'm going to buy us a place, and then you'll be welcome anytime. Don't leave it too late, Kai. Man, I miss you. If you go down to Mary's, have a beer for me. Tell her how do and that I'm doing good. Tell her I miss her food. Tell her I miss her big, beautiful tumbo. Your brother, Tejani. At the bottom of the page, a postscript had been added using the same pen, but in a different hand. This is Helena, TJ's friend. TJ tells me about you all the time. This is true. I very much look forward to one day when we meet. Kai starts to write and stops. It has been 2 years now, and still he feels Tejani's absence, feels it in his soul, Ayani, cold and hollow. When Tejani left for America, they'd punched fists at the ferry port, making believe Tejani was going away for a few weeks. When you get there, send something small for me, Kai joked. They had turned away from each other. Kai thought of nothing but the next hour, the next day. He did not let himself think, was incapable of thinking further than that. Tejani could, though. He had gone. They'd always planned to live together. In the end, he pens a paragraph congratulating Tejani on his exam pass, on being one step closer to membership of the elite professional body, which is his ambition. He lays down the pen and sips his coffee, not knowing how to finish the letter. He should just take up Tejani's offer, send over his resume. The coffee is tepid. He drinks it hastily. A half hour has passed. From the table he picks up and pockets all 3 letters and lets himself out. Minutes later he enters the ward. A nurse passes, carrying a kidney bowl of swabs and a pair of faucets. She nods at him. He just opened his eyes. I was on my way to get him something to drink over there. Hello, Dr. Mansare. Fode's voice is husky. How are you? I'm fine, thank you, doctor. A small grin. Kai can see how hard Fode is struggling to keep his eyes open. I just wanted to tell you everything went well. So fingers crossed, hey? I will pray for that. We'll take a look at that leg in a day or two, just to make sure everything's all right. May I? Kai pulls the sheet down to uncover Fode's legs. The young man pulls himself up, using his powerful arms and shoulders. From there, he looks down at his leg, reaches to touch the cast, and will get you a wheelchair for the time being. With those arms, Kai doesn't doubt Fode will be able to wheel himself anywhere he wants to go. Yes, doctor, may God bless you. Above the bed, a photograph is tacked to the wall. One Kai has seen before, a Polaroid taken around the time Fode was admitted to the hospital. It shows his legs from the waist down before the 2 operations, the weak calves angulated from the knee, the feet below turned in upon themselves. Not one, but 2 congenital abnormalities of the lower limbs, Blount's disease and talus in both legs, plus a dislocated kneecap, which had floated around the side of his left leg. By contrast, above the knee, the thighs had the muscularity of a sprinter. His chest and his arms were massive. Unbelievably, Fode walked. 4 operations then, 2 to straighten the calves, 2 to correct the ankles, and then the months of physiotherapy. Kai has no doubt Fode will see it through. He is a fighter. A surgeon recently arrived from Geneva had passed by as Kai was examining the x-ray, stopped to look. He had been both shocked and excited. Do you know how often we see this in Switzerland? How often, Kai replied. Never, not once in my career. Tell me when you're operating. I'd like the opportunity to observe, if I may. And he had bowed slightly, as though Kai was the senior of the 2. The war was medieval, neither in concept nor in tactics. Whatever the view from elsewhere, only in the hardware. From the outset, the patients came in 2 classes. There were the soldiers and foreign peacekeepers, victims mostly of gunshot wounds, sometimes grenade and mortar wounds. In the second class were the peasants, the ones who somehow made it from their villages and were admitted with their C scrawled heavily on their charts, unarmed and poor. the waste of a bullet wasn't so much resented as simply unnecessary. They were the victims of attacks using machetes and cutlasses. C. The doctor's own shorthand adapted to the circumstances. C. Cleaved. Kai gained hundreds of hours of experience in repairs, stitching layers of muscle, sewing skin, patching holes with pieces from elsewhere, surgical housekeeping. Late in the war, the rebels advanced upon the capital, and in advance of them came the first of the amputees, mostly the team of surgeons concerned themselves with saving lives, cutting away necrotized flesh, repairing the hatchet jobs, the way they once in peacetime referred to the work of laser surgeons. Though there were occasions, a few, when the attackers had been either merciful or inept, when it had been possible to reattach a tendon and restore a walk. Later, a team of surgeons, including Kai, practiced the Kuchenberg intervention, unused since the First World War, fashioning out of the muscles, the two bones of the wrist, a pair of blunted pincers, a hand. Ugly it was, true, but Kai had seen a man once again able to hold his own penis when he pissed. A mother placed a nipple into her child's mouth. In those months of turmoil, Kyle had discovered a new and enduring love of orthopedic surgery. Still a junior surgeon, he had seen and dealt with more than some consultants of 30 years. 6 o'clock now. Kai heads for the men's changing room, where he exchanges his scrubs for day clothes. Now he is hungry. On the way home, he stopped at the roadside and buys okra, onions, pepper, and smoked fish from the women traders. No meat, too late for the butchers. He hails a taxi, a shared one, and checks the route. The driver is going via the Peninsula Bridge. Kai lets him go, waves the next taxi down. On his way up the road towards the house, he sees a bus hanging over the veranda railings. Kai raises a hand. The boy turns to rush down the stairs. As Kai opens the door in the metal gate, the child hurtles towards him, throwing his full weight against his stomach, arms around his waist. Kai braces. All the same, the impact very nearly wins him. Hey, my man, you are almost too big for that. How goes it? The child doesn't reply, but pulls Kai's arm around him and buries his face in his side. Together they walk up to the house. Is your mother home? Yes, but she's gone out again. She told me to tell you to Yeama, Abbas answers in his deep little man's voice. Yeama is a neighbor whose sister-in-law died in childbirth. Yeama has been left with the infant. The father, serving with the army on the northern border, has no idea yet of either the arrival of his daughter or the death of his new wife. Abbas's mother, Kai's cousin, makes visits bearing baby clothes and tins of formula to Yeama's tiny house. The child was born prematurely. Kai doesn't imagine she'll live too long. How hungry are you? Can you eat again? Abbas nods. Good, says Kai, squeezing the boy's skinny shoulder. In the kitchen, an aunt sits on a stool in the corner, her chin in her hand, nodding in sleep. At the sound of him, she grunts and raises to help. But Kai gently resists and she shuffles off, wrapping her lapa about her. Still half asleep. Doubtless they've left something in the pot for him, but today he wants to cook. At the workshop, he unpacks his purchases. He slices the onion, chops each finger of okra into a dozen pieces. He loves the routine and rhythm of preparing food. It brings him to a feeling of peace, being able to close off a part of his mind, just as he was in surgery, putting the cast on 4 days' leg, or in sometimes suturing a wound, tying off the end stitch after stitch. Operating affords him a privacy, an escape from the world into a place which has its own narratives, its own emergencies, but which is a less random world, one he can control with his skills. Cooking, though less absorbing, does something similar. In the corner of the room, Abbas sits on the stool in the corner, twirling a piece of string around his fingers. So, what did you do at the school today? The child shrugs. Nothing. Nothing at all? Abbas shrugs again. So, how did it go? This doing nothing. You sat at your desk and stared out of the window. Kai takes a paper, halves it, and dices it swiftly. Yes, says Abbas, grinning. That's exactly what we did. Ah, so you did do something. You sat and you stared. Was that good? What did you see? A giggle. I don't know. I was looking out of the window this morning. Do you know what I saw? No. I saw 50 orange monkeys racing by. Did they come your way? Abbas's grin widens. Yes, they did. They ran past the school window. That sounds interesting. Did your teacher see them too? Mrs. Ture? No, because she was facing the blackboard. What about the other kids? They were looking at the teacher. So it was just you. Lucky old you. What else did you see? When I saw the orange monkeys, I noticed they were being followed by a brass band. Yes, I saw the brass band too, and the Pied Piper of Hamelin, and all the rats and all the children. Abbas claps and bounces on the stool. The angry townspeople, the mayor, 1 foot Jombi, the hunting devil, a talking sheep. Now, that's a good one. Can it predict the future? Yes. And do arithmetic? Yes. It can do everything. Well, maybe you should have given the talking, mathematically minded sheep your seat in the class while you went and joined the parade. Do you think Mrs. Ture would have noticed? This last sends Abbas into a fit of giggles. Kai carries the pot outside and places it on the fire. There is a stove in the kitchen, but cooking gas is frequently in short supply. And anyways, Kai's aunt prefers to cook on charcoal. For Kai, there is something elemental about it, like bathing in a stream or making a journey by foot. While the food cooks, he goes to wash, dousing himself in water from the bucket in the corner of the bathroom. In his room, he slips on a clean t-shirt and a pair of cotton drawstring trousers. Abbas sits and waits for him, perched on a set of drawers crammed with papers. Can I sleep here tonight? Do you want to? Yes. Kai laughed. Abbas regards it as a privilege to sleep in Kai's room and dreams of the day when the room will be his. Okay, well, let's see. Together they carry plates of food out to the bench on the veranda, where they eat and watch the world as it goes by. A rush of air. He can feel his cheeks distort with the force of it. His stomach flips over. He is falling, the stinging slap of water. He wakes with a jolt, convinced he has levitated, that he may actually have felt the impact of the bed. It takes several minutes for his breathing and his heart rate to return to normal. When it does, he can hear the ticking of his watch on the nightstand, the howl of dogs calling to one another in the night, the same wavering notes, endlessly repeated. He gets up and picks his way through the house. The odd murmur, the occasional sigh accompany his passage. By his reckoning, it is around 4. The darkness has begun to lift. This is the 3rd night in a row, and the lack of sleep is beginning to tell on him. If tonight he doesn't get a few more hours, it will start to affect his work, his concentration, even his hands. He sits and waits for sleep, though he knows it may be as far off as the coming dawn. After an hour, he rises and goes back into the house, only partially retracing his steps to Abbas's room. The child lies asleep on the bed. He picks up the child's light body and leaves the room. Abbas's thumb falls from his mouth. His hand trails over Kai's shoulder. Never waking, the child tucks himself into the crook of Kai's body and replaces his thumb. Kai lies still and lets his mind follow the rhythm of the child's breathing until it drones the howling of the dogs. until he sleeps.